You know, I guess that after Blizzard announced that they would have delayed the game to continue the tuning and the balancing, particularly at the end game, I guess they wanted to give us a show of faith, starting with a few more tuning changes and balance passes to Covenant's legendaries this time, and some class changes. So let's go over all of the class changes that went through in the last couple of days, starting from the least changed specs, the one that have received the least amount of changes so far. So let's go. First up we have Shaman. Shaman hasn't really gotten many changes except for two talents. One is Surge of Earth for Resto, and one is the Earth Shield talent for Elemental. Earth Shield talent for Elemental now is going to heal 20% more on the target, which is funny because you want extra single target healing on your Resto Shaman, and now it's Elemental Shaman that's getting a heal increase on Earth Shield. That's pretty confusing. The talent change for Resto is that your Surge of Earth is now going to heal 3 allies for 250% spell power instead of 6 for 100. If you watched my healer video, I pointed out that Surge of Earth is useless for Resto due to their vast amount of abilities to heal in AoE situations, and instead what they needed was an oh shit moment for single target. 15, 20, 25 second cooldown, very strong, that can bail them out on some dangerous situations. Now Surge of Earth is moving a little bit more in that direction. 250% spell power on 3 target instant is very strong. However, it's in the same talent row of Echo of the Elements, something that should have been baseline since like 2 expansions ago. So I don't think this is going to be very powerful, if anything, just because of its placement on the talent rows. Other specs with quite a few changes, we have Warlock, who only received 2 changes. Their second to last row of talents. Roaring Blaze was the talent you picked for the sustained consistent damage of your main rotation outside of Chaos Bolt, whereas Reign of Chaos was the one you picked for your burst. The one that needed nerfs the most obviously was Reign of Chaos. It wasn't uncommon to have 4, 5 even Infernals out in your burst window, so that was necessary. Not much else to say there. And another spec with not many changes was Warrior. It's gotten 3 legendaries changed for both Arms and Fury. Prot unchanged. Arms has gotten Enduring Blow and Exploiter nerfed and Battlelord buffed. Fury has gotten nerfed across the board. Deathmaker and Enduring Blow, the similar talent for both specs. Chance to apply Colossus Smash or Siegebreaker on the target when you use your main ability, Mortal Strike or Rampage, has gotten both nerfed. The main change though, the main difference between the two is that Arms has received a buff on Battlelord. Now you have a 45% chance when you use your filler to reset Mortal Strike. This is by far the biggest change. It is also the biggest change when it comes to altering your rotation and altering your priority and your focus in your play, which is positive. It's a positive thing to buff legendaries of this type. Exploiter made your execute work the same way Overpower works when it comes to buffing Mortal Strike. This is a little bit more of a nastier nerf. As for Fury, it's just more nerfs. Cadence of Vegeta was already alright before. It was still good mostly because it compounded on your haste stacking with your enrage, and if you wanted your frenzy talent, now it's trash. 50% nerf. And Reckless Defense, don't even bother about this. It was a shit legendary before, and now it's got nerfed by a third, so it's even more mediocre since you don't really base your entire rotation as a Fury Warrior around your cooldowns, around recklessness, so not that big of a deal. 2 more specs with very few changes. Classes even. Monk and Druid. Druid, their damage modifier aura went from -18% to -8%, so that's a 10% increase, and they have gotten changes to their Soul of the Forest and Starlord talent row. From 9% stackable haste to 12% for Starlord, and doubled the Astral Power generation on Soul of the Forest. The area effect of Starfall is pointless, it's already fucking gigantic. And for Monk, you had a nerf to their single target legendary of Windwalker, down by nearly half, basically. And then changes to the legendary of Brewmaster, rather boring. The only possible exciting one is Charred Passions, making you have more consistent AoE damage. But beyond that, not really anything crucial for the classes and the specs. And the last of the classes in the small changes camp is Paladin. The only 2 changes, one of which is big, are Retribution. Their Word of Glory has gotten a 30% extra heal modifier, which is pretty good. Word of Glory was by far the worst of the 3 for Retribution compared to Holy and Protection. It's certainly a better change for, PvP situations rather than PvE, but it's still a welcome change. And then the big one is that Holy Shock went from 9-second cooldown to 7.5-second cooldown. If you have watched my healer video, I mentioned already how Holy is set back by the loss of borrowed powers. They have much less haste, much less free discounts, much less cooldown reduction, no ineffable truth, no vision of perfection. They will lose 30% haste, so that their scaling is very slow, and this is going to help a little bit. Although it is bound to be possibly broken later on in the expansion when it's gonna go down with haste to like 4 seconds. We will have to see, but good change for now. On to classes with a few more changes now. We have Mage. Fire has received only one major change, which is to their Sun King's Blessing legendary. This is sad, because this is a legendary that would and should have been nerfed later on in the expansion, but not now. They wouldn't have been able to abuse reaching 6 hot streaks to proc 6 seconds of combustion that often, but later in the expansion they certainly would have. By the time we are 2 tiers in, this legendary would have been completely broken. Fire mages would have been able to enter a rotation where they proc 6 hot streaks within the 6 seconds of combustion, so that they can hard cast a pyroblast to proc another combustion window where they can proc 6 hot streaks, so that they can cast another non-instant pyroblast to proc another combustion window. It would have been ridiculous, but not at the start of the expansion. So goodbye to this legendary for a while. And since we're saying goodbye, let's say goodbye to some more. Frost. When I looked at this legendary, I was confused. This legendary was bad before, and when I read 90, I thought it was a typo. Like, what the fuck? Why would they even nerf this when Freezing Winds is completely broken? It makes no sense. Oh, okay. I guess it makes sense now, because Freezing Winds is dead. You didn't care about Fingers of Frost during Frozen Orb, you cared about the CDR with this legendary, which is gone now. So now you no longer play with Perma Frozen Orb as a Frost Mage. This hurts them a lot in AoE and Cleave from Mythic Plus. They're gonna be going down a peg. We'll have to see, but this is definitely hurting them. When it comes to Arcane, though, 3 major changes to their legendaries. Arcane Bombardment doubled in effectiveness for stronger execute windows. It's good. Arcane Harmony has gotten its damage shifted. You went from 10% extra Arcane Missiles damage with 2% damage boost on Arcane Barrage to no more damage on Arcane Missiles, but 6% damage on Arcane Barrage. This, I assume, is an attempt on stifling the perma spam of Arcane Missiles build that was possible in the beta. This 10% less damage is gonna hurt a bit, and it's gonna shift the power on Arcane Barrage. And then Siphon Storm. Your do-it-yourself Azara's Font of Power has gotten nerfed. I am happy about this, because I don't want the poor Arcane having to fit another cooldown in their build-up window with Evocation. So, me personally, I am in favor of this. Now talking about Hunter. A moment of silence for the poor Soulforge Embers. From the moment they were born to getting into this horrible state. Really sad. Other major changes. Beast Mastery has gotten the buffs where they didn't want the buffs, and the nerfs where they didn't want the nerfs. That's kind of what happens when you do tuning and balancing. The weak legendaries have gotten buffed, and the OP legendary has gotten nerfed by 50%, which is still likely going to be the strongest legendaries anyway, but that's what balancing is, my fellow guys. Talking about getting weaker, we have Marksmanship. I am really happy right now. You can't see me, but I have a big smug smile on my face, because I continued this campaign about Marksmanship being broken in the beta. I had to deal with seething people annoyed that I didn't put Marksmanship in SSS tier in every single category by mentioning how overtuned their abilities were. And over time, Chimera Shot has gotten nerfed by over 60%, and now their Serpentstalker's Trickery is also getting the NERFBAT. From 3 targets getting shot with Chimera Shots now, you have 2. So, pretty big change. Another change to their other legendary, Secrets of the Unblinking Vigil. This is going to be a small, minor buff on single target, but a nerf on AoE. You wanted to continue having trick shots while you were trying to do AoE, whereas when you wanted to do single target, you didn't care about the trick shot effect, because you were only hitting 1 target. So the refunding of the aim shot charge is going to be much more valuable in single target. Oh yeah, Survival also exists. Survival has gotten a nerf to their most boring legendary, Wildfire Cluster, which is, again, way over the top as a nerf. You don't even throw Wildfire Bomb often enough for this to be worthwhile. It wasn't before, now it's even worse. Nerfing their AoE when AoE is by far their weakest spot. And guess what they do? They buff the single target with latent poison injectors. Another buff with Butcher's Bone Fragments to AoE, but don't get excited. All three of you playing survival. The time it takes for you to stack up the damage increase on your carve has been nearly halved, from 10 stacks to 6 stacks. This is going to make it easier for you to be able to actually use it in a pack in Mythic Plus. Because before, by the time you got to 10 stacks, the pack was dead. Now it's a little bit better, but it doesn't matter when the damage increase is applied to carve, an ability with dogshit scaling. Boring and disappointing. Now talking about Priest, we have to go quickly through Holy and Discipline. Holy has gotten a aura modifier, 5% more healing now to all their abilities. And Discipline has gotten nerfed on their Schism from 40% spell damage modifier to 25. That's pretty big, because that is the entire rotation of Discipline, lining up cooldowns around your Schism for a big atonement window. That's gonna hurt them. But we have to take a stop to Shadow. Just like in the last video for class changes, where Shadow was just an attention whore, a diva, now they wish they weren't. Insanity Generation nerfed on their Void Bolt, Mindbender and Mind Blast. Searing Nightmare damage nerfed. Devouring Plague damage nerfed. Hungering Void Talent nerfed. From 15% increased damage to 10 and 25% damage on their second Void Bolt removed, in exchange for having 2 seconds of extension on their Void form when they crit with Void Bolt, up from 1. It is still a nerf, it doesn't make up for the loss of the damage increase. The real big nerf is going to be Shadow Flame Prism, something I mentioned before, I'm sure everyone else mentioned it before. Big key for being strong in Mythic Plus, this one. Mindbender with this legendary had legit a 15-second cooldown, and the extension made it possible to continuously use your Mind Blast and Shadow Word Death while Mindbender was out to do massive AoE damage, and now it's gotten gutted from 300 to 120 spell power, and extension gutted as well. That's gonna hurt a lot in Mythic Plus. So, Shadow Priest, sorry, your attention-seeking tendencies have reared their head, and now they've come back to bite you. Moving over to Rogue, we jump immediately to Subtlety, because we have gone over the corpses of Marksmanship and Frost, assassinated by a round of carefully placed nerf bullets, and Subtlety is not getting away. Sorry, man. No. Your nerf is not changing the name of Shadow Vault into Black Powder, which is kind of a nerf, because it's definitely a worse name, but the real nerf is this. It took time to get to this point. We went from 100% damage, duplicated, and combo point generation, to 50% and combo point generation to 50% and no combo point generation, and now we are all the way down to 15% effectiveness. It was needed, that was broken, and now it's fixed. I would want some of the other legendaries to be buffed in power instead of just this nerf, so we'll have to see. When it comes to the other 2 specs, confusion is the term I would say for assassination. I don't get these changes. The execute window legendary from Legion, Zoldyck, has been nerfed by 33% from 30 to 20, that's weird, and Dashin Scoundrel has been nerfed even worse. Halved the effectiveness of the energy regen, and over 3 times as much of a nerf when it came to the crit chance of the poisons. This is weird. Assassination had a very clear niche when it came to single target, sustained damage, and this change doesn't fit. Nerfing their single target damage without anything in return, or with no quality of life change, is confusing. Then again, this is not the end of the tuning, this is not the end of the balancing, so there's gonna be time for changes. But for now, this is confusing. What is not confusing is Outlaw getting the NERFBAT across the board. Now the first 3 legendaries, Celerity, Concealed Blunderbuss and Greenskin's Wickers, are pretty bad nerfs. You know, they hurt. A third of the buff of Celerity coming in, nearly half the extra damage on your pistol shot buff. These are hurting. What really hurts though is Guile Charm, because before you could line this up with your burst window and have a 15-second window with 30% extra damage, which was ridiculously strong. Now, from 30 to 8%, this really hurts your burst window as Outlaw, which is good because Outlaw was overtuned, so it's a good change. Not for Outlaw players, I'm assuming, but still good. We are closing with Death Knight, starting with Blood. It seems like Blizzard wanted to give Blood the Brewmaster treatment, because their damage is getting gutted from 29% damage modifier to 0 on all of their abilities. They have gotten some chump change in damage modifiers on their Blood Boil, their Morrowind and their Hurt Strike, but it's obviously not nearly enough to make up for the base damage that they are losing. This hurts them in Mythic Plus quite a bit in terms of their sustained damage. I mentioned they weren't as high as Vengeance and Prot Paladin, which, by the way, have not gotten nerfed yet, and this is gonna throw them even further away from them. They are now closer to Brewmaster tier than they are to Vengeance tier in terms of damage. When it comes to Frost, mixed feelings, because Biting Cold has gotten buffed. This was an alright legendary, but not very crucial, so it is good that it's getting buffed. This is exactly the type of legendaries you want to buff. I'm sad because Kultira's Favor has gotten nerfed, and Kultira's Favor was a good legendary for the two-handed single target focused Dream of Frost. You wanted to focus your Obliterate, and this hurts. Rage of the Frozen Champion, the more diverse and all-round, all-purpose legendary, has gotten nerfed. Again, hurts a little bit, but it's not that bad. But it's not as terrible. It's not as disastrous as losing Shadow Flame Prism on a Shadow Priest or Sun Kings on a Fire Mage. Unholy, again, round of nerfs. And this one's hurt. I mentioned the Frost ones weren't that bad. These ones are bad. Deadliest Coil is going to remove the dream of giving you a 100% uptime Dark Transformation, which was possible before this. And Frenzied Monstrosity, nearly nerfed by 50%. Again, that's what happens when you have two strong legendaries and they are outliers compared to the others. They get nerfed. What else could have happened? Also, just to mention, minor nerf also to Pheromones, the neutral legendary, haste nerf. I mentioned this one being a pretty strong legendary early in the expansion because you have shit stats, and this is legendary that gives you free 10% haste, and the result was to gut it. Okay, but with this we are done with the changes. Biggest changes were the nerfs to Shadow Priest, without a doubt. Some of the nerfs to Outlaw as well were the outliers, as well as the buffs to Balance Druid, which was in the weakest ranks of range DPS, particularly when it came to tuning their rotation and their abilities. It was in a pretty bad spot. It got a few changes. We'll have to see how it goes. I am done with this. I am going to retreat to my cave, and I will see you guys at the end of my hibernation.